The dust rose in thin, restless waves as the wagon creaked to a stop at the edge of the ranch, and every man within sight paused what he was doing to stare. It had been months since anything new came down that road, and even longer since Hope had followed. The land was dry, the cattle were thin, and the fences leaned like tired men ready to give up. So when word spread that a mail-order bride was arriving, most of them expected trouble, not salvation. She stepped down carefully, boots touching the cracked earth as if she already knew it would not be gentle with her. Her dress was plain, worn from travel, but clean. The wind caught a loose strand of her hair and tossed it across her face, yet she did not brush it away right away. Instead, she studied the ranch, her eyes sharp, taking in more than anyone expected a stranger to notice. The ranch owner stood a few steps away, arms folded, watching her with a guarded expression. He had written the letter in a moment of desperation, not hope. A failing ranch, unpaid debts, and a season that had turned its back on him had pushed him to do something he never thought he would. He did not expect much from the woman who answered. Certainly not someone who looked so calm standing in the middle of a place that was falling apart. A few of the ranch hands lingered nearby, whispering under their breath. They had seen all kinds pass through over the years, but this felt different. There was something about her that did not fit the picture they had in their minds. She did not look frightened enough. She did not look unsure. If anything, she looked like someone who had already made up her mind about staying. "You came a long way," the ranch owner said finally, his voice rough from too many quiet days and too many heavy thoughts. "I did," she answered, her tone steady. "And I plan to make it worth the journey." That earned a few quiet laughs from the men behind him, but they quickly faded when she turned her gaze toward them. There was no anger in her expression, just a quiet confidence that made them shift their weight uncomfortably. The wind picked up again, carrying the dry scent of the land with it. Somewhere in the distance, a loose gate knocked against its post, over and over, like a slow reminder of everything that was breaking down. "This place needs work," she added, looking back at the ranch owner. "That is one way to put it," he replied. He did not tell her how close he was to losing it all. He did not tell her about the cattle that had been dying one by one, or the water source that had nearly run dry. Those were burdens he carried alone, or at least that was how it had always been. She nodded once, as if she already understood more than he had said. Then she did something none of them expected. She walked past him without waiting for an invitation, heading straight toward the nearest fence line. Her steps were quick, purposeful, like she had somewhere important to be. The men exchanged looks, unsure whether to laugh or follow. The ranch owner hesitated for a moment before turning and going after her. By the time he reached her, she had already crouched down, running her hand along the base of a fence post. She pressed the dirt, studying it closely, then stood and looked toward the far end of the property where the land dipped slightly. "What is it?" he asked. She did not answer right away. Her eyes moved across the horizon, tracing something invisible to everyone else. "The ground is wrong," she said quietly. He frowned. "It has been wrong for months." She shook her head. "No, not just wrong. It is telling you something." Before he could ask what she meant, she turned to him with a look that stopped him cold. "If I am right," she said, "then this ranch is not dying at all." The wind fell still for a brief moment, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The ranch owner stared at her, unsure whether to be irritated or curious. "Then what do you call this?" he asked, sweeping his arm across the dry fields, the brittle grass, the cattle that stood too still in the distance. "Because it looks like the end to me." She did not answer right away. Instead, she stepped past him again, walking toward the dip in the land she had been watching. The soil shifted under her boots, soft in some places, hard in others. She moved slowly, as if listening with her feet as much as her eyes. The men followed at a distance now, no longer laughing. Even the wind seemed quieter, like it was waiting to see what she would do next. "I grew up where land like this fooled people," she said at last, her voice calm but firm. "My father used to say dry ground does not always mean dead ground. Sometimes it just means something underneath is blocked or buried." The ranch owner crossed his arms again, but there was less certainty in his stance now. "You saying there is water here?" "I am saying there was," she replied. "And maybe still is?" That caught the attention of every man within earshot. Water had become a word they avoided, like speaking it too often might make the absence of it worse. He stepped closer to her. "We have dug wells." "Nothing but dust." She glanced at him. "Where?" He pointed toward the far side of the ranch. "Out past the old barn." "We tried twice." She shook her head slightly. "That is not where the land dips. Water does not always stay where you expect it. It moves, it finds its own path." One of the older ranch hands spoke up, his voice skeptical. "You talking like a surveyor now?" She met his gaze without hesitation. "No, I am talking like someone who has seen a farm come back from worse than this." That silenced him, though he did not look convinced. The ranch owner studied her more closely now. "You never said anything about this in your letter." "There are many things I did not say," she answered. He let out a slow breath, feeling a strange mix of frustration and something else he had not felt in a long time. It might have been hope, though he did not trust it yet. "Why come all this way?" he asked. "You could have chosen an easier life." She looked out over the land again, her expression unreadable. "Easy does not last," she said quietly. "And I did not come here by accident." Before he could press her further, she knelt again and began digging into the soil with her hands. The dirt was dry on top, but a few inches down it changed, darker, cooler. She paused, letting the loose earth fall through her fingers. "Feel this," she said, holding out a handful. He hesitated, then stepped forward and took it. It was faint, but there was a difference. Not wet, not exactly, but not as lifeless as the surface. "This means something moved through here," she continued. "Maybe not long ago?" The men shifted closer now, their earlier doubts slowly giving way to curiosity. "If you are wrong," one of them said, "we lose more time we do not have." She looked up at him. "If I am right, you stop losing everything?" That hung in the air, heavier than the heat. The ranch owner clenched his jaw. He had spent months making careful choices, trying to stretch what little they had left. Risk was something he could not afford. Yet standing there, holding that handful of soil, he felt the weight of another truth. Doing nothing was no longer safe either. "You said the land is telling us something," he said. "Then say it plain." She rose to her feet, brushing the dirt from her hands. For a moment she looked almost unsure, as if deciding how much to reveal. "There should be a stream running under this section," she said. "Not deep, but steady. Something is blocking it or forcing it away. And you know this how?" he asked. Her eyes met his, and for the first time there was a flicker of something guarded behind her calm. "Because I have seen it happen before," she said. "And I know what to look for." The wind picked up again, sharper now, carrying a faint sound from somewhere beyond the ridge. It was not the loose gate this time. It was something lower, more distant, like the echo of water moving where it should not be. Every head turned toward the sound. The ranch owner felt his chest tighten. "You hear that?" She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "And I think we are already too late if we do not find where it is going." The sound came again, low and uneven, like something shifting deep beneath the earth. It was not loud, but it carried just enough to unsettle the men who had spent their lives reading this land. They knew the creak of dry wood, the rustle of wind through dead grass, the distant call of cattle. This was none of those. "We would have heard that before," one of the ranch hands muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. The ranch owner looked toward the ridge, his jaw tight. "Or maybe we stopped listening," he said. She was already moving again, heading toward the rise where the land curved out of sight. Her pace was faster now, her focus sharper, as if the faint sound had confirmed something she had feared. The others followed, though not all with the same purpose. Some walked with curiosity, others with doubt, and a few with the quiet worry that chasing hope might only make things worse. As they climbed, the ground grew uneven, scattered with rocks and patches of stubborn weeds that had managed to survive where nothing else could. The wind picked up along the ridge, tugging at clothes and carrying that strange sound more clearly now. It was water. Not flowing free, but forced, trapped, like it was pushing against something. The ranch owner stopped short, his eyes narrowing. "That is not possible," he said under his breath. She did not stop. When she reached the top, she dropped to one knee and pressed her hand flat against the ground. For a long moment she stayed there, completely still, then she looked up. "There is a break somewhere," she said, A collapse or a blockage. The water is being forced sideways. Sideways to where? He asked. She turned her gaze down the other side of the ridge, toward a part of the land they rarely used. It was rough, uneven, and marked by old fencing that had long since fallen apart. To somewhere it should not be, she answered. A silence settled over the group as the meaning of her words began to sink in. If water had been moving under their land this whole time, then it had not disappeared. It had been taken, redirected, or trapped. One of the younger hands spoke up, his voice uneasy. There is nothing out there but rock and scrub. Not nothing, another said quietly. There is that old boundary line. The one no one bothers with anymore. The ranch owner's expression darkened. He knew that boundary. It marked the edge of his property, and beyond it lay land that had changed hands more than once over the years. Lately, it belonged to someone who kept to himself, someone who had not been around long but had already made it clear he did not welcome visitors. You think this has something to do with that? He asked, though he already felt the answer forming. She stood and brushed the dirt from her skirt. I think water does not vanish without a reason, she said. And I think someone might have found a way to take advantage of that. The idea settled heavily among them. It was one thing to lose a ranch to drought. It was another to lose it because something had been taken without their knowledge. We would have seen work being done, one of the men argued. You cannot just move water without leaving a trace? She glanced back at him. Unless it was done slowly, quietly, over time. The ranch owner exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. If someone is diverting water from this land, that is not just bad luck. That is theft. No one answered, but the tension shifted. This was no longer just about failing crops or dying cattle. It was something more deliberate, something that suggested they had been losing this fight long before they realized it. A few of the men began talking among themselves, their voices low but urgent. Some wanted to go straight to the boundary and see for themselves. Others warned against it, reminding them that crossing into another man's land without proof could lead to trouble they were not ready for. The ranch owner remained still, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He had spent months blaming the sky, the heat, and the soil. Now he had to consider a different kind of enemy. He turned to her. You seem sure about this. I am sure enough to keep going, she said. There was something in her tone that made him pause. It was not just confidence. It was familiarity, like she had walked this path before in some other place under different circumstances. You have seen this happen, he said slowly. Not just land going dry. Something like this. She hesitated, and for a brief moment the calm she carried slipped. Yes, she admitted. What happened? Her eyes shifted toward the far side of the ridge again, toward the land beyond their reach. By the time we understood it, it was almost too late, she said. The wind carried the sound of that trapped water once more, louder now, more urgent. The ranch owner felt a cold weight settle in his chest. And was it saved? She did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than before. Not without a cost. The words stayed with him long after she spoke them. Not without a cost. He had already paid plenty to keep the ranch standing, and the thought of more loss tightened something deep in his chest. Still, as the sound of trapped water echoed faintly through the ridge, he knew one thing for certain. Standing still was no longer an option. We go see it, he said at last, his voice steady but firm. A few of the men shifted uneasily. You mean cross over? One asked. I mean, we find where that water is going, he replied. If it is still on our land, we have every right. If it is not, then we figure out why. No one argued after that, though the tension did not ease. They began moving down the far side of the ridge, the ground sloping sharply and forcing them to pick careful steps. Loose stones rolled under their boots, and the wind carried more of that low, pressing sound, like something alive beneath the earth. She stayed near the front, her eyes scanning the land ahead. Every so often she would pause, glance at the soil, the shape of the ground, the way the weeds grew in uneven patches. To anyone else it looked like nothing. To her it was a trail. The ranch owner watched her as they walked. There was still so much he did not know about her. She had arrived like an answer to a question he barely understood, and now she was leading them into something that felt bigger than a failing ranch. "You said you saw this before," he called out, stepping closer to her. "Where was it?" She kept walking, a place not too different from this. Dry land, struggling people, and water that stopped where it was needed most. "And someone was behind it?" "Yes." He waited, but she did not say more. "What happened to them?" he pressed. This time she slowed, her expression tightening just a little. "They thought no one would notice," she said. "And for a long time they were right." That was not the answer he wanted, but it was enough to keep the unease alive. As they moved farther, the land changed in small but important ways. The soil grew darker in patches, and the ground dipped more sharply. Broken pieces of wood and old tools lay scattered, half buried, as if someone had worked here and then left in a hurry or chosen not to be seen. One of the ranch hands bent down and picked up a rusted metal spike. "This was not here before," he said. The ranch owner took it, turning it in his hand. It was worn, but not old enough to belong to the original fencing. Someone had been here recently. The sound of water grew louder, no longer just a faint echo. It was still hidden, still forced, but it was closer now. It pushed against the silence, demanding attention. They reached what used to be a boundary fence, though most of it had collapsed. Only a few posts remained standing, leaning at odd angles. Beyond it, the land looked rougher, but there was something else, a pattern. Lines in the dirt that did not belong to nature. She stopped abruptly, holding up her hand. "Look," she said. They followed her gaze. At first it was hard to see. Then the shape came together. A narrow trench, carefully cut into the ground, running along the edge of the property. It curved slightly, guiding something invisible, something just below the surface. The ranch owner stepped closer, his heart pounding. He crouched down and pressed his hand into the trench. The soil there was cool, damp. "This is it," he said, almost to himself. The others gathered around, their earlier doubt gone, replaced by a rising anger and disbelief. "Someone did this on purpose," one of them said. "Yes," she replied. "And they have been doing it for a while?" The ranch owner stood, his gaze following the trench as it disappeared farther ahead, leading beyond the boundary line. His land had not failed him. It had been quietly drained, piece by piece, while he watched everything fall apart. "We follow it," he said, his voice harder now. A few of the men hesitated. "If this leads where we think it does—" "It leads to answers," he cut in. She stepped beside him, her expression calm but focused. "Be careful," she said. "Whoever built this will not want it found." The wind shifted again, carrying not just the sound of water now, but something else, a faint clatter. Metal against metal, everyone froze. The ranch owner narrowed his eyes, looking toward where the trench curved out of sight. "We are not alone," one of the men whispered. She did not move, but her voice dropped slightly. "Then we just reached the truth at the same time they realized we were coming." The ranch owner felt his grip tighten as the sound came again, clearer now. Someone was working ahead. And they had just been discovered. The sound ahead stopped as suddenly as it had begun. For a moment, the only thing left was the wind brushing over the dry ground, and the quiet breathing of men who were no longer sure what they were walking into. The ranch owner took a step forward, then another, his eyes fixed on the curve of the trench. "Stay close," he said, his voice low but steady. They moved together, careful and alert, following the narrow path carved into the land. With each step the signs became clearer, fresh marks in the dirt, tools set aside in a hurry. And then, just beyond a cluster of rocks, the truth revealed itself. A small diversion channel had been built, hidden just enough to avoid notice from a distance. Wooden boards reinforced the sides, guiding the water away from its natural path and sending it deeper across the boundary. A crude but effective system. Water that should have fed the ranch had been quietly stolen, redirected day after day. Standing beside it was a man, caught between running and staying. His hands were still damp with soil, his face tense with the kind of fear that comes when a secret no longer holds. The ranch owner stepped forward, anger rising but held in check. "You want to explain this?" The man hesitated, then looked at the group behind him. "There was no easy way out now. I did what I had to," he said. That land out there was just as dry. No one was helping. No one was coming. "So you took it from us?" one of the ranch hands snapped. I took what I could reach, he replied, his voice strained. Same as anyone would. The words hung heavy, but they did not sit right. The ranch owner shook his head slowly. No, he said. Not everyone would. Silence followed, broken only by the steady, forced movement of water through the channel. She stepped forward then, her gaze fixed on the diversion. You built this well? She said. But you rushed the last section. The man frowned, confused. What? She pointed toward a weak point where the boards had started to shift. The pressure is building there. If it gives, you lose control of the flow. It will flood part of your land and leave both sides worse than before. He looked at it, and for the first time, uncertainty replaced his stubborn defense. I was going to fix that. You were running out of time, she replied calmly. The ranch owner watched the exchange, something shifting inside him. This was not just about anger anymore. It was about what came next. We can stand here arguing, he said, or we can fix what has been broken. The others looked at him, surprised. You would just let this go? One of the men asked. No, he answered. But I am done watching this land fall apart. If there is water here, it needs to be set right. For all of us, the man by the channel stared at him, unsure. Why would you help me? The ranch owner glanced at her, then back at the flowing water. Because this mess will not fix itself, he said. And because losing everything is not something I would wish on anyone? For a long moment, no one moved. Then she stepped down into the trench, already assessing what needed to be done. If we break this section and reopen the natural path, the stream should begin to balance again, she said. But we need to work quickly. That was all it took. The men moved without another word, lifting boards, shifting soil, working together in a way they had not in months. Even the man who had built the diversion joined in, his hands steady now with purpose instead of secrecy. The work was not easy. The pressure fought against them, the earth resisting change, but slowly the channel gave way. Water pushed through, hesitated, then found its old direction, spreading back into the land that had been waiting for it. The sound changed. No longer trapped or forced, it flowed steady and free. The ranch owner stood back, watching as the ground began to darken, the soil drinking in what it had been denied. It was not a miracle, not an instant fix, but it was a beginning. He turned to her. You saw all of this before anyone else did. She shook her head slightly. I just knew what to look for, and you chose to come here anyway. A faint smile touched her face. I told you. I did not come by accident. Around them the men worked on reinforcing the natural flow, making sure it would hold. There was still a lot to repair, fences, cattle, trust, but something had changed. The weight of losing had lifted just enough to make room for effort again. As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the ranch, the owner looked out over his land. It was still rough, still uncertain, but no longer silent. Looks like this place is not dying after all, he said. She followed his gaze, her eyes calm but certain. No, she replied. It just needed someone to listen, and for the first time in a long while, the ranch felt like it might have a future worth fighting for.